Oh, Lord. Whose phone is that?
Oh, my God. I don't have a home phone.
No, I hope you don't have a home phone. I wouldn't have thought it was your home phone.
Oh, hey, everyone. Welcome to WagerTalk Straight from the Strip with me, Minty Bets. Is Kelly Stewart. Hi, Kelly. Follow her on Twitter at Kelly in Vegas. And the star of today's show, Gianni the Greek at Greek_Gambler on Twitter. Hello, Gianni. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Never better. We got something to look forward to. We had the draft last week. Turned out pretty well for most of us. And now we got some MMA on deck. 3 shows and 3 events in 8 days. So that's a lot of opportunities for us to play some bets. So it's good times.
Super exciting. Yeah. So we have a very special show today. Yep. Thank God. I know you're super excited about heading on an actual sport.
You know, I laughed because I was like, wait, do I even need to be on today's show? We all know that I don't know a lot of UFC. And almost everything I know about the UFC, I get from our man, Vegas runner, Gianni the Greek. So this is going to be like Yanni's show today. He's going to be the entire show. I'm going to chime in where I can. What I am actually going to do is something different. Well, what I'm going to do something different is I'm going to jump in the chat.
Oh, that's exciting. Very exciting. Okay. I'm having sound problems and Kelly froze. But Yanni, you're there.
I'm still fine.
Your sound is perfect,
is Kelly
Minty.
Talking because... Oh, okay, because Kelly has frozen, and should I just keep going on?
Absolutely. You've got Yanni. He can handle everything, plus Kelly's frozen eyes just blinked.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. You're back. Okay, so anyway, this show today is very special because this will be strictly regarding next weekend's UFC fight, UFC 249, which takes place in none other than Florida at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena, to be exact, on Saturday, May 9th. It's pretty official now, right, Yanni?
Yes, it is. It is going down. I hate to say it's 100% because no one saw a pandemic coming a couple months ago. But with that said, everything's on course and in place for those fights to go down. I don't see anything stopping it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And lines are moving. Lines are already moving, so money's being bet, that's for sure.
They are. I've seen they are moving. So let's see what we can do here. So everyone, don't forget to check out Yanni's 5% play for UFC 249. He's increased his clients' bankrolls by 97.61% just this year, and that includes 23.35% in MMA. You can get his 5% big move for only $2 at WagerTalk.com. So let's just get straight to the card because our time is limited. The Ferguson Gaethje fight will be the last fight we go over, and we're going to cover 5 of them. So let's begin. Just FYI, I'm getting my lines from Circus Sports here in Las Vegas. Of course, with so much time until this fight happens, odds will most likely change. And like you said, lines are moving. So the first one we're going to go over is going to be the women's strawweight Carla Esparza, minus 145 favorite, versus the karate hottie Michelle Waterson at plus 125.
Who
Waterson
makes up these nicknames? I need to know that. People give themselves. Some of these are pretty funny.
Mine would be the Muay Thai sweetheart, okay? I would be like, okay, I'm going to kick you now, or something like that.
Oh, Lord.
That's my nickname. Waterson holds a 17-7 record, and her last fight was a loss to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Carla Esparza with a 15-6 record, coming off a win over Alexa Grasso. Yanni, can Waterson avoid back-to-back?
You know, price is everything when betting all sports, and MMA more importantly, because you're strictly focused on a money line. And when I see a lot of preview shows and prediction shows, they break down the X's and O's pretty well, but they don't cover the betting side of it. And that's really what matters ultimately. The X's and O's are a very small part of it because that's factored into the betting line already. So looking at this fight from an outside perspective, just bottom line it. When this line opened, Carla Esparza was around a minus 130 favorite. So break even at that point is around 55, 57%. So that's what that line implies. She will win this fight 57% of the time. That's what the market says. You either agree with it or disagree with it. The model that I created came up with her being able to win this fight closer to 65% of the time. So I thought there was a lot of value immediately just based on implied win probability. The way I factor that is it's taken years to come up with actual data that is causation, meaning it's predictive, because there's a ton of data that's great to read and sound smart repeating, but it's not predictive data. So if it's not predictive, it's not really going to help you. And some of the predictive data is things like age, reach, pace. Those things, there's causation to it. So with Esparza, first off, the fact that this line opened up that high should be a red flag immediately, because Michelle Waterson is the name in this matchup. That's who's going to get the casual bettors money, is that side. Most wise guys I spoke to that like the Esparza side were sitting back waiting for that line to drop, and they wanted to bet Esparza around minus 120. That's where one of the sharpest groups that bet MMA thought there was a ton of value on Esparza. I didn't think there was going to be enough public money on Waterson to drop the line down that low, so I bet Esparza at minus 135. I bet Esparza at minus 140, and now at some places she's up to minus 160. Now at 160, you got to be a little bit cautious because, again, price is everything. And if you're betting a fighter at minus 130, you're saying the implied win probability is 56, 57% at minus 130, okay? Now, if I'm betting a minus 150, I'm saying the 60% chance they win, about a 3% bump. Now, we know you don't have much of an edge in sports betting. So if I'm going to start laying 150, 160, 170 on Esparza, where's my edge? Where's my margin? Even if she wins, I didn't place a good bet. And again, the only way you beat the market long term, and I'm not to tout myself, but the reason I'm up this year that much, the reason I won last year, the year before that, is not because I'm a good predictor of outcomes. It's because I search for market inefficiencies. And that's the only way to beat an efficient market, is to find some inefficiencies. So I thought this line was off. The market moved with me, which gives me some confidence. And again, I like the Esparza side here. Age, close. Reach, close. Height, close. They're very comparable physically. Even though Esparza will look like the smaller fighter, but her wrestling, her edge there, I think should negate any size advantage Waterson has. And I like Esparza's experience, coupled with the fact she's only lost the top level opposition, and fights she lost, other than the Joanna fight, it could have gone either way, some of those. So I think she's live here. The only problem is that line's moved up to minus 160 now, so some of the value's gone. Not to go too long on this, I like Esparza.
So real quick, VR, I just wanted to ask you, sorry to cut you off, Minty. We're getting some questions in the chat. If you guys have a question for VR, definitely chime in. I have a personal question. You know that we all have different accounts. I have an account that is extremely, we'll call it extremely sharp. It mirrors Pinnacle most of the time. They have, and not all the time, but most of the time right now, they have Esparza minus 165, Waterson plus 135. At that point in time, is this worth a wager on Waterson, or is this just completely stay away?
I would stay away. If Waterson got up to that like plus 150 range, I would have to look at her. But right now, I think it's Esparza or pass, even at that price. I really do. I think a lot of fans and bettors are going to be surprised at how, not easy, but they're going to be surprised of how Esparza is able to handle Waterson. Esparza has improved every time inside the octagon, and her striking game is what she lacked. She won the tough with wrestling, nothing else, pretty much. And she was exposed by Joanna in her striking, and that's been her weakness. But it continues to improve, and I think she'll be just fine here. And I'm not surprised to see some of those sharper books up to that 160 range. But if you'll agree with me on Esparza, Kelly, I think you could sit back and wait, because the casual money hasn't reached the window yet completely. And again, I do think it'll be at least 65-35 Waterson. So that should drop the line some, unless you see another buy order from sharps on the favorite. Otherwise, I would sit back and let the casual bettors bring that price down for you on Esparza.
Wow. All righty. Moving on to the heavyweight, Greg Hardy, a favorite of -180 versus Yorgan de Castro, plus 155. The favorite, who is a former NFL player, Greg Hardy, off a loss, now expected to go up against Yorgan de Castro, who only has one pro MMA fight up his sleeve, which was a knockout over Justin Tafa. Gianni, this one seems like a harder fight to cap. Are you betting this one?
Actually, I am betting this fight. I bet it immediately the last time when this was supposed to go on April 18th. When we get to the main event, I'll discuss that, because I also had placed a bet on that one.
I remember. And
I liked Hardy immediately.
Really?
I'm a fan of De Castro, don't get me wrong. And 6-0 record, extremely impressive, hasn't lost yet. But I just think Hardy's athleticism and the fact he got into MMA at 30 years old, close to 30, is a negative. But I am seeing constant improvements. And that's difficult when you're in your 30s. You rarely see that in athletes. But with him, because it's a new sport, you're actually starting to see that. He's very well trained. He's got a great camp behind him. He wants to fight a lot, as much as possible. And I think De Castro's, I don't want to say inexperienced, but it is kind of inexperienced at this level. I mean, I saw him fight in the Contender Series. I was there covering it. And, you know, he had that first round win, impressive. Then against Tafa, first round win, impressive. But what happens if you get dragged into the second and third round? Something Hardy has gone into, and something Hardy has proved he can handle. Hardy could go 15 minutes, and as a heavyweight, that's very rare. I'm not in any rush to lay -200 on heavyweights, because there is a randomness to betting heavyweight fights unlike any other weight class. And when there's a randomness involved, that's one of those factors that you can't quantify. It's just with heavyweights, one shot ends it. You don't need combinations. You don't need to follow it up. You need one shot. And because of that, you got to be cautious if you're ever going to lay chalk. But in this spot, I do think it's a Hardy or pass situation. If you're not comfortable betting favorites around that -170, -200 range, maybe tie him into the parlay. But his physical advantages will be obvious when they get into the octagon. You will see a man who is 6 inches taller, who's got an over 6-inch reach advantage, and trains at ATT. You just aren't going to get that kind of, it's rare to get that kind of edge in heavyweight, because they're all that big. But again, his athleticism coupled with his reach, his size advantage, I like the big guy, man. They're both big guys, but I like Greg Hardy in this one.
So, Yanni, we know one of the things with betting Hardy heavyweight fights such as this is that there's always a potential for a massive knockout. Do you think Hardy is worth a little sprinkle on maybe a first or second round knockout?
I do. Here's why. Because you're getting value on Hardy by KO or TKO because he's gone to decisions, where rarely do you get a good price on a heavyweight to win by knockout or a heavyweight to win a fight inside the distance. But because Hardy's gone the distance, you're getting a decent price, over plus 150 for him to get a finish. To me, I think there's a lot of value there. And I won't be surprised if he does finish him in that second round, early third, because once that first 5 minutes are over, those big guys, man, when they come out for the second round, few of them have much left in the tank. And I just think Hardy, that conditioning is going to be the difference. Again, Chael Sonnen always says, fighting's the quit game. It's who can you make the opponent quit? That's who wins. And the one way to make your opponent quit is to have a lot better cardio than them and to push that pace. And there's not much they can do. And I think that's the difference maker here. Hardy's pace, Hardy's cardio, and Hardy's size. And it won't be surprised if he gets it done inside the distance. So knockout KO plus 150, why not? I like it.
Okay, thank you.
I like it too. All right, the next heavyweight is going to be Francis Ngannou at a minus 280 favorite versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, plus 235 dog. Two heavy hitters with power. Gianni, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, this one is heavily favored not to go to distance. In fact, it's minus 300 that it finishes inside the distance. So the betting markets concluded there's a 75% chance this one will not go to the judges. The randomness of heavyweight fights in this one is what has me off of Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is the one fighter in the UFC right now that I believe probably the most capable of having a belt around his waist as we speak. Meaning if he gets in that octagon against the champ, he lost to him last time with Stipe using his wrestling, but I think if Ngannou improved on that, he's got a shot. The problem with MMA is MMA math doesn't work. Just because fighter A beats fighter B and fighter B beats fighter C doesn't mean A's beating C.
That's NFL math too.
Right? It doesn't work, right, Kelly? Or even more so, if one does it impressively and one barely wins. That's what we have here. We have a case where Francis Ngannou almost killed his opponent in his last fight, and Rozenstruik had that same opponent. That opponent was beating Rozenstruik for 14 minutes and 55 seconds. If he lasted 5 more seconds, he would have beaten Rozenstruik, but one-shot knockout with a couple seconds left, Rozenstruik wins. That's why he's in this fight. With that kind of knockout power, I got to look to the dog or leave it alone. This has a dog or pass situation written all over it. Again, I think Francis Ngannou is championship material at heavyweight. I think he's capable of having a belt within the year of 2020 or 2021. But in this fight, I would not lay minus 300 with him. I don't think you're getting any line value, win or lose. You're paying a premium, and I wouldn't call this a coin toss, but I think Rozenstruik has a much better chance than this betting line's saying. He's got better than a 25-30% chance of winning this fight just from sheer power alone. So again, this is a fight I haven't bet, but I will probably add Rozenstruik into a parlay or two just because I like that plus money. Hasn't lost a fight just yet. Again, this is a big step up in competition for him. But there's confidence when you haven't lost. You know, those fighters go in there with a ton of confidence when they're undefeated. So, again, giving me plus 250 or so, I'll take it. Why not?
Yeah, right. All right. Now, on to the welterweight. I'm going really in a weird order. Donald Cowboy Cerrone plus 115 dog versus Anthony Pettis minus 135 favorite. The decorated kickboxer Cowboy Cerrone is 3-3 in his last 6 fights, most recently with a very memorable loss to McGregor back in January. And Pettis is 2-4 in his last 6, coming off back-to-back losses, but he's won 50% of his fights by knockout. These two have actually fought against each other before many years ago. And Pettis won, bless you. Pettis won in the first round. Things have since changed. Do you think this fight will go all rounds, Gianni?
Here's where I had a problem, and I'll explain. Yeah, I've made it no secret. I found a great programmer that together we've come up with a lot of data that we have found to be predictive in MMA. And our model shows Pettis was the side here. In fact, as soon as the line opened, I bet Anthony Pettis at minus 115, at minus 120. He's now up to that minus 140 range, 150 at some spots. That completely different fight. Personally, I don't like Pettis at minus 150.
Okay.
I believe this line's going to drop, and here's why. One of the groups that I move for actually is going to be betting Cerrone as a dog. They were looking for Cerrone as a dog. They're seeing the line move up on Pettis, so they're sitting back. The reason the line's moving up on Pettis, though, is because their sharp money moved it up. So there's a difference of opinion here between guys that do well long term. I'm in the camp of liking the Pettis side. First off, simply on the fact this is a rematch. If there's one thing, we have statistical significance. We have a big enough sample size that there is statistical significance. The fighter who wins the first fight since UFC 1 wins the second fight 65% of the time.
Wow.
Since I think 2010, 2011, going back almost 10 years, the winner of the first fight has come back and won almost over 70% of the time. Wow. So there's been a big advantage with statistical significance of the fighter who wins the first coming back and winning the second fight. That trend, again, isn't enough for me to fire on Pettis. But I thought the Pettis side being younger, being 4 years younger, again, now Cerrone falls under that age group that has the worst winning percentage in all of MMA. Once you pass 35 years old, you will lose.
What are you trying to say, VR?
I passed it a long time before you did. If you even passed it yet, I'm not even sure about that. I think that's all rumor and speculation. But the guys over 35 years old, now obviously not all of them, but a big sample size, lose 2 out of 3 times they enter the octagon. So if you're betting a guy who's over 35, you got to find your spots and be very selective. They don't win all that often. There's outliers, obviously, but you got to be selective. So we have an age advantage with Pettis here. Even though Cerrone may be the bigger guy, it's not by much. He may have a half-inch reach advantage, maybe a 2-inch height advantage. It'll be negligible at best. Coming off that loss he had against McGregor, I don't think he's going to bounce back in a positive way. I don't see good that could come out of that result. I mean,
at this point, is it just a paycheck for him, VR? Like, what's the point of keeping fighting so that you don't end on note like the McGregor fight? I
think that, Kelly, you nailed it. I don't think it's money. He's good there, from what I've heard. He's handled his money well. He's invested well. He seems to be fine. I think it's more, this is what I do. This is all I know. There's money on the table. I have a small time limit left. Let me do it as much as possible. Outcome be damned. If you looked at Cerrone a year ago, when he had his son, he had won 2 fights in a row, and he was refocused and saying, I'm back to win a title. My whole career, I never cared about winning a title. It was always about putting on a good fight for the fans and being a fan-friendly fighter that just wants to throw down as often as possible. And I've made a career doing that. He's got the most bonuses. So he's made a lot of money with that style, but hasn't been able to win a title. He thought maybe 2 years ago that run's about to come. He found out when the spotlight's on and you're facing number 1 or number 2, you're just a little bit short. So now you know you ain't going to get a title. You're not going to get a title shot. At that part in your career, what are you fighting for? I think it's just that opportunity of getting a couple more fights in, maybe another record added to your resume. Where Pettis, I think he's more in the game still. Again, he's 33, so that 35's coming. But still, I just think mindset-wise, huge advantage to Pettis. And I think even if you look at the style, the matchup, I don't see Cerrone having advantages. Like when I try to look at what's his route to victory, I don't see any way that Pettis can't stop that. Like he's got something Pettis has no defense against. So for me, I like the Pettis side, but I bet it at -115, -120. When you get the -140, -150, it's a different fight. So it's on you whether you agree with me or not. But I can tell you there are sharp guys that disagree with me that think Cerrone at plus money offers some value. I tend to disagree, but we'll see what happens.
All righty, now for the fight we have been waiting for. Tony Ferguson, a -170 favorite versus Justin Gaethje, plus 150 dog. Yanni, I know, if I remember correctly, a couple weeks ago before the first UFC 249 got postponed, you liked Tony Ferguson, who is on a 12-fight winning streak. He's up against Gaethje, who looks to be a really impressive contender with a 21-2 record. Do you still like Ferguson in the fight? Can you say?
As soon as those lines went up last time, when this fight was supposed to be on April 18th, when Ferguson came out.
They're all the same month right now. Basically,
right?
like
I don't even
March
know what month or day it is. I swear, I don't even know the month.
I thought it was Thursday, and I overslept for this video, so that was fun.
That's how I remember by when we have to do this. And I think he opened around -160. And I thought at that point he had every advantage. Stylistically, I thought he had an advantage. I thought he's got the reach advantage, which is huge. I don't want to give it, obviously most people know, but again, reach is very big in MMA. There's statistical significance there. With that said, I like the fact that Gaethje was on real short notice. I could already tell you, my data shows late replacement fighters, if they have if they're taking a fight on less than 6 weeks notice, they have only won 38% of the time. So over 6 out of 10 times, the guy who's been prepping has that huge advantage. So everything pointed to Ferguson.
Is that why, VR, we've seen people pull out of fights after they agree to fight? Because they don't feel like they're prepped because it is such a disadvantage. I mean, obviously they're not constantly at fighting weight. I mean, that takes, at least 2 months, if not longer, for some of these fighters to be in tip-top shape. Is that like a normal thing? They're now realizing that?
110%. And you also have to factor in, a lot of these guys are disciplined, but a lot of them aren't. And they'll tell you that they spend the first few weeks of camp getting into shape, that they're not there really doing drills. They're not really focusing their entire practice on the opponent. It's more about, let's get into fight shape. Let's be able to go a whole 15 or 25, depending on what bout it is. And then we'll start looking at the X's and O for this opponent. There are guys that do stay in shape year round. Ferguson's one of those guys. Gaethje, I heard he stays in shape pretty much. But even going into the April 18th, Gaethje said, listen, I have 18 good minutes in me. It's a 25-minute fight, but I'm going to give him 18 minutes of hell. So I had bet Ferguson at -160. It had gone up as high as -190. So I thought I made a good bet. I thought all the factors were in place for that to be a good bet. Again, let's not forget, Tony Ferguson was training for Khabib, the best 155-pound fighter on the planet. I mean, you're getting ready for the best guy around. Now you're not getting ready for number one. It's a little easier. But with that said, the fact they didn't fight on the 18th and the fact it's got moved now and given Gaethje an extra 3 weeks, the variables have changed. I'll go as far as saying I like the Gaethje side or pass at +160. Even I think at +150 or better, it's Gaethje or leave it alone. Gun to my head, I think Ferguson wins this fight. Like if it was my family's life on the line and I had to pick the winner of this fight, I would say Tony Ferguson. But as a sports bettor whose only goal is to place good bets, trusting that long-term doing that will leave me money, the good bet is Justin Gaethje at +150. or better. I really think his probability of winning are much greater than 40% now with a much fuller camp. 3 weeks is a long time for fighters to prepare, even though that last week is just more weight cutting, doing fighter meetings, doing the last preparation shit. But believe it or not, those extra 2 weeks that he's going to have to both game plan and get into even better shape, I think make him a live dog. And I hate to say it because I was so in on taking advantage of this fight, on Gaethje on short notice, Ferguson training for Khabib, stylistic, everything. But again, Gaethje's style is tough to handle, and he's become a lot more disciplined. And again, it's a totally different fight. Ferguson's been training for Khabib now for a long time. Gaethje's a completely different fighter than Khabib. 2 different game plans you need. So, and factor in Ferguson cut weight for April 18th for no reason at all, except to show he could cut that weight. And he got on the scale at 155 a couple weeks ago, and now he's got to get down to that weight again. I don't have any sample size to show how fighters respond to that. So we'd all be guessing. There's really, I don't think, any value you can grab from it. But I don't see how it could be that much of a positive to have to cut weight, make weight, and then have to do it again a few weeks later. I get it. These guys are wrestlers. They've been doing it their whole lives. But there's a difference between losing 3 and 4 pounds in high school wrestling, even though you're fighting every week, and losing 25, 30 pounds in a week, like they do in MMA sometimes. So again, I got to look to the Gaethje side here, man, at plus money. I hope, again, if he wins, it almost ruins Khabib Ferguson, which is the fight everyone wants to see. So it's like people don't even want Gaethje to win. But do not be surprised. And Gaethje by KO or TKO at plus 200 or better, I think would be a steal. If I could find plus 200 or better, that he's got a 1 1/3 shot of knocking him out, I think he does. At 155, few guys have more power. So again, it's Tony's fight to lose, but that price just is not right. No way would I see minus 190 at William Hill. No way. There's no way.
Here's a question, VR, that I think a lot of people have on our minds, as we did, and we kind of discussed it on the last UFC show that we did. How much of an impact having no fans there do you think it's going to be on the fighters? I mean, we've talked about this in every single sport, but MMA, some of the guys feed off. We know John Jones feeds off the booze, right? Conor feeds off the crazy Irish crowd that chants all sorts of ridiculous things. I mean, I have to think this is going to affect their performance.
It should. The only problem is how. You know what I mean? And this virus.
And there's no way to quantify it?
I've been trying, Kelly. I've been looking at let other handicappers do the same. I check their social medias all the time, like their Instagrams, to see who's training, who's not training, who's staying in shape throughout.
Who's partying.
Exactly. In this break, again, it's one of those variables that's an unknown. But with that said, it also is an unknown for odds makers, I think. So they're having a problem with this at all. Where I do hope it helps is with the judging, that the judges won't be swayed by the fans, because you see it all the time. A guy lands a big punch, even it may miss, but the fans looks like it landed clean, and the fans go nuts. And as a judge, you're going to have to react to that. How can you not? And sometimes you see fans all on one side. And a judge, I mean, you're human. There's going to be a slight bias. It's just so hard not to have one. And again, if you're hearing people cheering at something, then something good's happening for your guy. And with decisions going up, here's what I've learned. That in 1995, 90% of fights finished inside the distance. Only 10% of mixed martial art fights went to a decision. So judges really didn't matter. 2019, 27% of fights went to a decision. So you could see the huge increase in that the judges are determining the outcomes. And in 2020, again, we've only had a couple shows, but it's even higher. It's a little over 30% of fights have gone to a decision. So I'm hoping at least with no fans that maybe this judging gets better. Because if we could have good judging, solid judging in MMA, you could make a ton of money. Because other than Major League Baseball and NHL, underdogs do best in MMA. In Major League Baseball, they win about 42.5% of the time. In NHL, a little over 40.5% of the time. And in MMA, 34.5% of the time, compared to only like 22 for NCAA football, 25 for NCAA basketball. So you can see that there's dogs are live, but the problem becomes with the dogs is that a lot of times it's the favorite that has the fans behind him. And a lot of times the judging will go that way. So, I mean, there's been more times that I have a dog that should have got the decision where I got robbed than times where I had the favorite and I got robbed. Very few times that I had the favorite and felt I got robbed. But I have had the dog plenty of times and felt the decision was not a good one. Hopefully, with more fights going to decision, that helps us. And the market becomes, more efficient that way. Less efficient for bettors, more efficient for outcomes. If that makes sense.
Wow. Okay. Well, amazing stuff, Gianni. That was a lot of great information. Thank you so much for your insight. If there's anything else, Kelly, anything in the chat you're wanting to throw out there?
Else. I tried to siphon through and answer the questions that I thought were most general and would be most pertinent to betting. But thank you guys for dropping in and arguing with one another over who was going to get knocked out, Gaethje or Ferguson.
That's funny. Awesome. Everyone, give Gianni a follow on Twitter at Greek_Gambler, Kelly at Kelly in Vegas, and me at Minty Bets. And subscribe to WagerTalk TV on YouTube. Click the bell icon as well to complete the subscription. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. See you next week on Straight from the Strip.